But I'm going to get us started. My name is Michael Sharon. I'm a member of the California Browncoats. And I'll be on today, and I have brought my own fan clothes. So, if you go to any con in the world right now, there is a 100% chance that many people will be cosplaying in a costume designed by Shawna Trpcic. And not even know who she is. But everywhere you see it. Many of you that are here are fans and know her work from Firefly. Still more of you know her work from Angel and Dollhouse and Dr. Horrible's Sing-Along blog. And many more for her work on The Mandalorian, on Book of Boba Fett, and Ahsoka. And we've got a bunch of people here that, we have a few people, and I'm telling you, there's a lot of people who want to be up here talking. There's so many people who want to share this amazing person. So, it was almost exactly a year ago, we were all gathered here. I thought I was going to make it through this. Where Shawna did the panel, and and shared her work with us and shared herself with us. Yeah, thanks. But most people know that she was suddenly and tragically taken from us too soon last October. We've gathered a few of the many people here to talk about this incredibly generous and unselfish soul. And in the interest of time, I'm going to have people introduce themselves as they talk about their experiences with this amazing person. And so Ray, we're going to start off with you. Ray, you may have, other than Joseph, I think that maybe you've known Shawna the longest.
Yeah.
And so you want to, first of all, you need to explain about what's the weird thing about the flamingo thing.
So the flamingos. So I think the Firefly fans are the ones that are the most familiar with Shawna's obsession with flamingos. That she had on Badger's costume a flamingo. That's not just Firefly. Every show she's ever done, she's tried to sneak a flamingo onto the costume just because she freaking loves flamingos. And so every show that she's done, I think in the Book of Boba Fett, it was the Thielen character in Boba Fett's throne room that it was on the back of her costume, she said. I don't think that one ever actually got on film, but every show there's some flamingo in there somewhere. But yeah, so I've known Shawna for 19 years. The only person in this room that has known her longer is her son Joseph, who's sitting right up here. He's the rookie cosplayer. But he doesn't really remember the first 2 years of his life, so I think I still.
But yeah, do you want to talk to us about the first time that you approached Shawna about helping you with an auction and her response?
Yeah, so 2004, I was one of the founding members of the California Browncoats. We had a booth here at ComicCon. I was running the charity side of it. So we were doing a raffle for Equality Now. We have done that a lot. And we reached out to Shawna to see if she had like a scrap of fabric or a drawing that she would donate. And, true Shawna fashion, she was like, well, I've got 2 boxes of Firefly costumes in my garage. You can have one of those if you want. So I got to go over to her house, and we sort of went through all these costumes that she had. The girlfriend that I was dating at the time picked the red dress that she wears at the opening scene of Shindig, and that went into our raffle. But Shawna had all these amazing costumes, and she had all 3 of the original Browncoats just kind of thrown across the back of her couch. Kaylee's parasol was up on a shelf. It was on a high shelf because when it was on the low shelf, Joseph got a hold of it and tore a couple more holes into it. That one we gave to Jewel, but everything else, I was telling her, do you realize how much people would love to even see these? She was like, no, they're costumes. Nobody cares about costumes. Oh, honey, no. So I helped her auction off all the costumes that she had, other than the ones she donated to us, and that paid her rent for several months because it was, these were the dry years after Firefly. where she went many years without a job, or without a well-paying job. And a year later, we brought her out to the Browncoat Ball in San Francisco that I co-organized. And a lot of the people that had bought those costumes in auction wore them to the ball. So I have a fantastic photo of her and like half a dozen people all wearing, her Firefly costumes in proper shipment. But when I first brought her to a convention, because she'd been doing costumes for years before we met, but she'd never experienced the fandom side of it. So when we brought her to ComicCon, WonderCon, and started showing her what you guys do with her costumes when she's not looking, she was blown away. She had no idea. She like the first time she saw a gaggle of chain hats walking past, she was just like, "That's my thing!" But initially, she would not go up and introduce herself. We quickly got her up.
And you were kind of her Sherpa, weren't you?
I was for many, many years. I would bring her to the conventions, show her around. Eventually, I had kids and stopped going to conventions, and last year, she very excitedly texted me and let me know that she had traded me in for the younger, cuter Mandalorian model. Given that, I'll hand it off to Brittany.
So Brittany, you want to talk about I think it's fascinating about how you first got to know Shawna. You want to tell us about that?
Yeah, so before I knew who Shawna was or what a costume designer does, I adored her work. Angel, Firefly, Dollhouse, those shows were my entire life. When I found out that she was also the costume designer on Star Wars, my mind was blown, and it was one of my life goals to meet her. One day, I was at work, and Shawna posted a photo of my friends and I in our Mandalorian costumes, which we had been wearing out to the writers and actors strikes to show support. And all of my friends sent me the post, freaking out. And then I was freaking out too, obviously. And then an hour later, my coworker Alex came up to me and said, "Hey, there's some lady here in a Star Wars shirt." And I looked over and it was Shawna. I was wearing my Bo-Katan pin, which she loved, and she was wearing an Ahsoka shirt. She said that we instantly clicked. We were talking and I asked her if there was any way the fans could support her during the strikes. And she was like, "Actually," and asked me to be her emotional support Mandalorian. Obviously, I said yes. We went to the con together, we went to this panel together. We had the best weekend, and on the last day, she sat me down and asked me to be assistant costume designer on Mando season 4. I said no, and that I didn't feel like I was good enough, and she replied, "Everyone who works for me feels that way." We talked about it for a long time, and she convinced me to do it and to simply try my best. That was the happiest day of my life, and I'll never forget the feeling of having someone I so loved and admired completely believe in me. Shawna was my favorite person I've ever met, and I'm eternally grateful that I got the chance to become her friend.
Thank you. So, the name card may say Elissa, but it's E,
Yeah.
from what I understand. And you work quite a bit with Shawna, particularly on Boba Fett and on Ahsoka and on Mando.
Yeah.
So you want to talk about that wild experience?
Yeah, so I was Shawna's assistant costume designer for Mando Season 3, Ahsoka Season 1, and Book of Boba Fett. And then we also did another show, Foundation Season 3, which isn't out yet, but coming soon. And we actually went to Europe, and that's where this photo was taken. We were actually in Paris doing research and shopping, which was, that night, I'll never forget, we walked to the Eiffel Tower, and she just turned and looked at me, and she was like, "Are we in Paris, being paid to be in Paris to shop?" And I was like, "We are." And we both just started laughing, because we were like, "How did we even end up here?" But I actually met Shawna a similar way in the sense of I was hired on Book of Boba Fett to be a day player costumer, which means you come in as they need you. So as they need extra hands helping out with background, it could be anywhere from 1 to 2 days a week, but I was brought on possibly to be in 2 to 3 days. First day I was on set, I was working, and all of a sudden I remember I was putting something on a background person because we needed more layers. They wanted to layer them up more. This comes from up above, so all of a sudden you're grabbing stuff off carts, and you're dressing the background more, and all of a sudden there's someone next to me as well doing it, and we both turned and we looked at each other, and I realized it was Shawna, and she was like, "Who are you?" And I was like, "I'm your additional costumer, my name is E." And then less than a week later, I was asked to come to the office, and I was like, "Oh God, they don't like me on set, I did something wrong." And then it turns out that Shawna actually really liked me, and she saw the potential in me. And I was also a huge Star Wars fan. Like, I'm a really big Star Wars fan, and she is too. And we clicked, and we got to know each other. And from there, I got to become her assistant costume designer. And I had been with her since then, so it's been about 3.5 going on 4 years that I was in a working relationship with Shawna. And she also used to call me her emotional support human. That was, Shawna, like you said, believed in people, and she really believed in taking chances. It doesn't happen every day that you meet designers, or really anyone in general in any workforce, who's willing to gamble on somebody. But Shawna liked gambling. She liked to take chances on people because she saw their potential. She didn't just see their worth as what they were face value. She saw what you could become, and she wanted to feed that and to help you grow. And her belief in you was just, one of my other coworkers is here, but he can tell you that we weren't just like coworkers, we were a family, and we supported each other. And we all of the crew from our Star Wars days miss her immensely, and we feel just this empty gap without her. But we're all determined to move forward and carry on her legacy, so that's our goals.
Well, now, somebody who couldn't be with us here today but wanted to send a message, I think we have a video that Felicia sent.
Shawna's work was so specific and imaginative. I mean, if you look at the things that she worked on, they were all fantastical, or a lot of them were fantastical. And yet she brought a sense of whimsy and organicness to everything that she designed. How would I describe Shawna and her career to somebody who doesn't know her? My goodness, I would say legend. I mean, she truly dressed some of the most amazing sci-fi iconic characters in the last 20 years, really. You really can't see a poster at a convention without, kind of seeing some of Shawna's work on one poster or another. She really had a huge impact upon the aesthetic of fandom and fans and sci-fi culture in general. I would love to point out that Shawna really worked very closely with the fan community in a way that I thought was so wonderful and beautiful, and a testament to how organically she loved the things that she worked on, just as much as the fans. She was an ally to the Browncoats, which is a fan organization dedicated to Firefly. She was always coordinating and working with charity initiatives. I have to tell you, she was quite an inspiration for me to get into the grassroots fandom of a lot of the shows that I early on. Yeah, because she showed me that fans, this is the lifeblood of these shows, are the fans. And yeah, I think she will be very greatly missed across the board, but she was a beating heart of fandom, and we are lesser for her loss. Again, you can go to any convention, even now, and see a Shawna creation, of somebody cosplaying a character that she dressed. And it is pretty wonderful. Her work resonates and will resonate for a very, very, very long time in the sci-fi and fantasy world.
So Tara, quick. So it's my understanding that did Shawna get you your first job? Or?
Yeah, so I had moved out to Burbank in 2013, and I had actually become just online friends with Shawna because I absolutely loved her work in Firefly, of course, and as a Whedon baby, basically. And just, we would talk to each other online, and she had posted about needing help on a little film set for some customers, and I had just moved to Burbank. I wasn't doing anything, and I was like, I can come on over. And popped over to the set of Revival and met her, so of course that was amazing, but it wasn't like, oh my gosh, you're Shawna, Trpcic, the costumer from Firefly. She was just like, hi, I'm Shawna, let's get to work. It was like, okay, this is great, but okay. And then, so we worked for a couple days, and then we just became friends, and it was great. And then a little while later, she had needed help for when the series Con Man, Ellen's series Con Man, she was the first costumer for it before, there's another story there, before she was no longer the costumer for it. But we spent weeks at Western Costume just going through shelves of costumes and, these boxes of costumes that have been used in other things, whether it was like Waterworld or Galaxy Quest and things like that. And it was really fun because we would just talk about, oh, how cool was this? Or what was your favorite part of this? Or do you remember this costume? And just going through everything. And then actually Joseph and Sarah would randomly be there. And it was kind of like you were saying, it was just this little family thing going on.
Speaking of memorable costumes, I think you had a story about the Jane Cobb hat.
So obviously, big
So
Fire.
we have some Jane Cobb.
Yeah, so I am definitely a very large Firefly fan. And even before I had met Shawna, I actually have I'm a Leaf on the Wind, Watch How I Soar tattooed on my sternum. So I know how iconic the Jane hat is, and I was talking to her one time, and there was a really neat geek girl organization in Santa Clarita, and they were trying to do just a monthly get-together, and I was like, hey, Shawna, why don't you come over and introduce yourself? And she was like, great, why don't I teach them how to knit the Jane hat? Okay. So seriously, it was this tiny little place, this little geek girl place up in Santa Clarita, and there was about, I don't know, maybe 10 or 12 of us, and we all just sat around, and she gave us the patterns, and we provided money, and we got the yarn and all that kind of stuff, and she taught us how to start knitting the Jane hat. We didn't get to finish it, but we took it home, and we all got to knit our Jane hat, learning from the woman who created the Jane hat. And that's one of the things that she did. She was like, oh yeah, I've got time, I'll come down and teach somebody how to make this costume that's iconic and people love, or I will stop and talk to you about the costume or answer your questions.
They look pretty cunning, don't you think?
They were very cunning. They were very cunning. Man walks down the street in a hat like that. But that was her. That was absolutely her. She was always willing to answer questions about the costume. Somebody could come up to her and be like, hey, I couldn't figure out how to do this. And she'd be like, oh, let me show you really quickly. It was the neatest thing. It was the neatest thing, and she made everybody feel so welcome in the fandom. And it was when she really got comfortable with it. And Ray was saying.
Talking about the fandom, I think that Marsia, right next to you there, I mean, somebody you had the full experience with Shawna and how fan-centric she really was.
So I've been trying to write little notes about things to remind me. And I'm sorry if I start crying again, because this is still very difficult. So the first time I did not meet her, but I knew she was there, was in okay, I'll be louder. Usually nobody needs a microphone with me. In 2006, there was the Browncoat Backup Bash. There was supposed to have been a Browncoat event, and the so-called Browncoats were very instrumental in having a replacement done because the company that was going to put it on disappeared with the money, with everything. And the talent showed up for free, spent the whole weekend with the fans for free, tried to keep them busy, just all kinds of stuff. And Shawna, I had been told, had brought her a dummy with the Ilari costume from Angel. And how dare I say the name wrong when it's my fan. But because she brought it out and she wanted people to see it. She was trying to help. She wasn't really, from what I understand, supposed to be a part of it. But she thought, what the hell, I'm local, I'm going to do it. That's the first time that I knew that she would do things for people without expecting to be patted on the back for doing it. I met her approximately face-to-face 2008. And it's all kind of a blur because she was just always there. Our group had started doing Halloween events and raising money for different charities each year, screening Dr. Horrible's sing-along blog, and we would show the guild. So Felicia would come to it the first year, We had a lot of talent who came in, and people came every year. But the big thing is that she was amazing behind the scenes in guilting people to come to some of these things. And I will tell you, I believe it was in the year 2009, Kids Need to Read was the charity. And that was something that Nathan Fillion was very involved with. But even though Alan Tudyk came and PJ Cosmos came, Nathan wasn't feeling it because they had spent 12 days filming Much Ado and he was exhausted. Shawna told me she had spent 12 days nagging him and guilting him. Well, you are coming, right? Well, I don't know if I'm going to be able to. Well, you know, Alan's coming. Yeah, well, it's your charity, though. Yeah, but I don't know. What do you mean you don't know? And she came that evening, because we did it in a movie theater, apologizing. She really tried her best. And she told me the stories. And then all of a sudden, there's Nathan. And Shawna had the biggest grin because she knew she got him to come. The other thing is, and yes, over the years, she'd come to our events. She came to the Hellmouth Con and Whedon Con to hang with the fans because we would do little experiences, and she did crafting with people, and she would schmooze with them, and she always, when she saw somebody, and it didn't just have to be one of her costumes, but especially if it was one of her costumes, she'd run up to them and she'd go, here, let me show you this, and if you do this, and on the cheap, you can do this, and she was always there, and sometimes the fans would just be like, oh my God, because that's not normal. But that was Shawna. When times were tough for her, around 2011, I knew her when things were happening in her life, and she still was taking care of other people. She reached out to me and said, you know, I made a second Kaylee costume when I made the original. It's not screen worn, but would you like it? And auction it off? And I'm like, yeah, you had me, would you like? And she signed on the inside of one of the pockets. And she did that, and it was raising money for another charity. The thing that I will leave with is, well, two things. One, the jade hats. There was a time, some of you may know, I think it was called Think Geek, and they're not around anymore, not because they did anything wrong. And in this case, they didn't do anything wrong. But there was a company who had them made in China. And the 20th Century Fox had given them the IP. And Think Geek, foolishly, because they didn't know any better, and that's the power of fandom, were buying it from them to sell. And that company went after all the Jane hats. That's when it stopped for a while, that you could say Jane, because otherwise they wouldn't, right, it was a cunning hat. It was the mama and all these other things. Well, she got pissed. And she announced formally, I designed that, me, and I give everyone permission to make it. And let them come after me. And I'm thinking, this is a ballsy lady I love. But she was just so amazing. I will close with, because of that, she really gave. No matter what was happening in her life, she gave of herself to others. When COVID hit, she was still giving and helping people. Within her church, I know that she was very involved. She was a very, very good person. And I ask from you guys, when you're doing something in the world, when you see someone, when you know of someone, help them, no matter how minor it is, and don't expect anything from it. But do it in Shawna's name.
Thank you for Juda, you got to work really closely with Shawna on doing. He's an armor guy, so see some armor. Probably copied your painting.
I think so. Yeah. Oh, there we go. Awesome.
Yeah. So you worked with her on Mando and Boba Fett and Ahsoka, right?
So I worked with Shawna on Mandalorian Season 3 and Ahsoka. I led the department in the armor, and I was the lead painter for all the armor. I had met Shawna back in like 2015. I used to paint for a lot of theme parks, like Disneyland, a lot of walk-around characters for Universal Studios, Warner Brothers, mascots, etc. And Shawna came in, I was working on some Disney projects, and Shawna came in to kind of like be a manager of the shop. She was just in between work. She was there for about 2 months, and I instantly just was drawn to her. She had such beautiful energy. It was nice, she was kind, she was making sure that we had everything that we needed in that department. I talked to her about church, about God, certain things, and we really hit it off. Shawna was awesome. And then she ended up leaving, and we still kept in touch here and there. And then I ended up getting into the prop industry for a lot of movies. So I started on like Mandalorian season 1 in the props department. So I remember watching the Book of Boba Fett. I think it was the Book of Boba Fett. And I also worked on the Book of Boba Fett as well. But I watched the gallery, the behind the scenes with my girlfriend, and I see Shawna. I see Shawna there. I'm like, I know her. I used to work with her. That's Shawna. You know, so it was kind of crazy to see her because we kind of lost touch after so many years. And I think I was working on like Black Panther or something, and I was like, you know what, I want to reach out to her and just see how she's doing. Or nah, she's probably, she's up there, she forgot about me or something. So finally, I guess I found the right time to send her a message. I'm like, hey, I sent her this whole like long paragraph of like, hey, how you been? It's me. I've been working on here and there, and her response was, do you need a job? So I was managing the paint department at that time in props, and I said, I'm managing here. I said, but I'm always open. So she said she needed a lead painter, someone to run her department. She offered me this, that. I couldn't resist, and that's how I got on Mandalorian season 3 in the costume department, and then also into Ahsoka. And like he was saying, she takes chances on people. One of my first jobs on Mandalorian season 3, she just hands me Din Djarin's armor. Here, repaint this. I don't like it. It's ugly. Right? So like it's like she knew I was a painter, but I don't know how skilled she knew I was. But she needed it repainted, and then she brings Bo-Katan's armor, and I'm like, all right, So that was that was pretty I guess risky, but then also too, those are your lead characters, for the show. So. Fortunate part is I knew how to paint them. I got in props and I learned how to use a lot of automotive paints. So nailed that. And then, there was a lot of, when we got on Ahsoka, there was a lot of things that I would refer her to or actually give my opinion on how something should be painted or how it should look. And she was open to a lot of it. So that was really great.
So who gets credit for Bo-Katan's paint job? Because that's my favorite.
For Bo-Katan, well, I did some on season 3, but I didn't do season 2. So I think Ironhead did that one. So then we had to do, and then on season 3, I had to do a lot of repaints from all the stunts. So it was constantly coming back, and I was having to repaint a lot. But what was really cool was, I don't know if anyone's seen the Sabine Wren for Galaxy's Edge. If anyone got to take a look at that, she was out for like 2 or 3 months, something like that. But I got hired by another company to paint that armor set. And they gave me a flamingo to put in there. So I was able to paint a pink flamingo inside the helmet for that. So that meant a lot to me. She was really kind. She was really thoughtful. She did help a lot of people out. So that was pretty amazing, and I got to say that, I was able to help her out. There's a lot of aspects of the film industry that a lot of people aren't aware of, and I got on Mandalorian season 3, and there was we did a lot of costumes. If you guys seen it, we did about 70 Mandalorians. There was a lot of work involved, on top of all the other stuff. But she believed in me, she believed in the crew, and you know, we brought a lot of heart and a lot of love to those costumes, and it showed off, especially when it came down to Ahsoka, because those were new characters, and those were, you know, this was a main character that was going to have her own show that was very popular, so that was a big deal. So Shawna will be greatly missed. A lot of
Thanks. So Ray, I've been waiting to ask you about your daughter was able to get her photo with Joel State, you know, kids, and didn't Shawna somehow see that picture?
Yeah, so for some of you guys here know that I've known Shawna for a lot of years. I'm going to apologize right now because unfortunately I can be up on stage in front of 5,000 people and not miss a beat, but on this one, I'm going to have a hard time. Shawna and I have been in the industry for a long time. We never got to work together, so I do apologize for that. But my youngest, she had Kaylee's party dress, right? Pretty iconic, and so
The cake dress.
Yeah, we worked for a father-son, father-daughter dance at her school because that's what she wanted to wear for her dance. Well, she heard that Summer Glau was going to be up in Reno. We'd already met Summer, who is my daughter's favorite. Well, then she found out Jewel was also in it. And she's like, Dad, we want to go. So, being the good dad I am, we made that trip up to Reno. We drove up there, and I got to see Summer, and then we got in line to see Jewel. Jewel got the picture, and she posted it. She didn't do a story on it. She actually posted it on her page. Okay? Tagged everybody, and I got to send a picture off to my wife. Hey, honey, we got the picture. Well, as I'm texting the wife, I get a phone call, and it's from Shawna. And I was like, Shawna's calling. Hey, Shawna, everything okay? What's going on? And for those questions of Shawna, Ray, why the hell didn't you tell me you were going to get that picture with Joel? That's the way I always like to remember Shawna. We didn't speak all the time. Sometimes there would be a couple months where we'd go by, but there would be just a text. Hey, I want to be on your podcast, but here's Greg's number. Shawna, who's Greg? He calls me. Hey Ray, can't really talk about it, but Greg works for Disney, and I got to filter everything Greg now, so could you please give Greg a call, because I really want to do your podcast, but there's some things I can and cannot talk about. I hung up, and I was like, damn, did I ask Shawna to do the podcast? I can't remember. Oh, God, I got a better call Greg, right? That was my relationship with Shawna, and the fact that we drove up there and we did that, that conversation will always be one of my favorites. Last time I got to see Shawna in person was San Deigo ComicCon last year, and I think that one may not have been the newest one we had, but I always wore this because this is what Shawna always remembers me as, doing this with my daughter. So for that, it was just those little things. It was her fact that she loved seeing what she created on everybody else. Whether it was a jade hat, Kaylee's party dress, whatever it was, she just loved it. And that was, what can I say, Shawna was just that way. So.
Well, speaking of dresses, but yeah, it's...
I have to say one more thing, and I really want you people to take this away. There's a reason why her best friend called her Sunshine. because she always had that spirit in her. And if there's anything that you take away from this panel about Shawna, it's to never give up and to always pursue what you want to do. She went through years. I mean, she was the costume designer for Firefly, Buffy, Cabin in the Woods. You know, she had these great jobs. And then she had really, really hard years. But she kept at it because it's what she wanted to do. And then she finally got her, you know, the big break on Star Wars. But she struggled. This was not easy for her. But she loved it, and she never lost that love. She never lost the passion, and she never lost the joy. So please, go through things that you've never seen her, that you didn't know that she costumed. Another period, one of the greatest ones she's ever done. Jason Ritter wears a pair of flamingo slippers. It's one of the funniest things you'll ever see. Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. A lot of people don't know that she did that. Toys with Robin Williams. She worked with Bob Mackie in regards to toys. I mean, she did some amazing things. So if you want to really just look at how long she worked at what she loved, go back and watch other stuff and just realize, just don't give up. And just remember to keep the sunshine in your life. I just have to say that.
Just a second. Because I wanted to say one, that's because we haven't mentioned, and we talked about the breadth of her work, we haven't even talked about, she's had multiple Emmy nominations. Yeah. And just real quick, and then Marsia.
Okay, I just want to throw something out. The ComicCon, ComicCon, the staff, the people who run it, they got all kind of crazy personalities of talent that comes through here. They actually, Laura Jones, who's part of the programming department, made this and asked that it be on the stage in memory of Shawna. Her loss, her life affected the staff and the board and everyone here at San Diego ComicCon. That's how special she was, that they wanted to be on the panel itself in their little way.
Thank you.
Well, two quick things. Going what she said, for Shawna and for the fans meant everything to Shawna, which is why I would argue her crew was made up of fans. I started out as a cosplayer. I'm low-key in the little Kaylee cosplay right now. Juda's been going to cons for forever and is a huge nerd as well. Our whole Star Wars crew itself was made up of nerds. We had cosplayers, we had people who had never even thought of working in film and TV that she would pull out just find randomly, and she'd be like, oh, I'm bringing in someone new, and I'd be like, well, where'd you find them? She'd be like, oh, I just met them. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. It's like, that was just Shawna, and again, she believed in people so much, but she also believed, she loved fans so much. She loved coming to conventions, and anytime we were working on a new costume, you obviously have to consider lots of things. You have to consider what the director wants, you have to consider what the showrunner wants, but when we were working on Star Wars, Shawna also always considered what the fans wanted and what they wanted to see, because that's how much she loved y'all. So our crew always was like, well, what would the fans think of this? So we always thought of you. But also on that note, with Ahsoka, we just found out last week that we have been nominated for an Emmy for Outstanding Costumes and Sci-Fi Fantasy.
All those people that have a vote, I hope they vote for Shawna Trpcic.
Oh yeah.
That would be awesome. Wouldn't that be awesome?
She loved nerds, and she loved being a nerd, and
Yes,
she loved the
she
nerd
was a huge
fandom.
nerd.
She really was, but she loved the passion that nerds had, I think was the biggest thing, is our passion.
We want to see you in a tux at the Emmys.
I'll be there.
Good.
And the last time that I talked to Shawna, she had just posted on Facebook, like, what exact fabric she used for the Ahsoka costume and where to buy it.
Which she was not supposed to do.
But she would tell anybody who asked.
Yeah.
For anything, where do you get this? Well, maybe you should look here.
Yeah. And I told her, I was like, all of my friends who are fans were so happy. They were like, wow, like I went to go get the fabric for one of my friends from the store for him. And I remember she said, like, everyone's mad at me because I said this and I wasn't supposed to say where the fabric is. Now everyone's going to go buy it. But she wanted the fans to be able to make their costumes as good as they could be. And that's something that no other costume designer really cared about. So she's just so special.
Yeah, Shawna was a true collaborator, which you don't get every day. You get a lot of, people who will hire a crew and tell them exactly what it is they want and want them to make it, which that's fine, that works great. But Shawna actually craved and always wanted to collaborate, and she constantly was collaborating with everyone on her crew.
Yeah, she'd be like, what, do you have an idea for this? Go look for this. Like, she sent me into the racks of Western. She's like, okay, I'm looking for this, but go find what you can find. Just take a rack and bring back anything that you think would be great. And she'd be like, no, I don't like that. Or she'd be like, that's a great idea. But it was just, like you said, it was a collaboration, it was the creativity, and it was just the fun. It was just fun. It really was.
So we have one story from Ray about his daughter, but I do want you to share, didn't Shawna do a dress for your daughter?
Oh, no.
Yes, no, that was my wife's wedding dress.
Oh, your wife.
Yeah, I've known Shawna longer than I've known my wife, so it's like get me, get Shawna with it. So when we decided to get married, it was just a no-brainer that we would, come to Shawna. And my wife had 2 bolts of silk that her dad had brought back from Vietnam years ago. And so we just gave those to Shawna. She came up with an amazing design. We got one of her costumers, I think it was Alana's mom, to build it for us. And it was just like the most amazing dress you've ever seen. Like, you cannot buy things like that at a wedding store. So on YouTube, I have my big full eulogy. I have a picture of it in there. But yeah, it's just, and little stuff like that. She just always wanted to do whatever she could do to help her friends, to help the fans. Just the amount of love that woman put out in everything she did is just mind-blowing.
And Ray has a really wonderful eulogy posted on YouTube specifically about Shawna and her life and everything that she did. I think it was about 20 minutes long.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah. But what is the name of it if anybody wanted to look it up just to learn a little bit more?
If you search for Remembering Shawna Trpcic on YouTube, you should find it. I also have little postcards that have the link on it that we can pass it afterwards.
So I think we have enough time for a video that someone else sent in. Yeah, go ahead.
Very quickly, I want to thank James Wade, who got us both. The Felicia finish and this finish came actually from a panel that he put together, and I want to make sure that we recognize that, and I'm going to play it right now.
And before we do that, this is Lynn. She's responsible for this whole panel.
In the audience to talk about their stories or questions or anything like that, but don't forget we are going to be kind of gathering out there after if y'all want to just kind of stay with us and questions or share anything like that, we will be there.
I first met Shawna on Firefly when she replaced Jill at the very end of, I think it was a train job. Shawna started it with the background, which meant dressing 400 people, and that's in itself an extremely complicated job because you can't design something for somebody who's going to be, walking through a shot, but everybody has to look like they're in that world, and that's something she did episode after episode with whatever variations. There was never a moment where she didn't find a way around how little we had. Shawna would be the sort of person who would just come to you with solutions. It wasn't like, how are we going to get this, or let's go back and try again. It was very much, that's taken care of. With the exception of one pink scarf that she put on Simon in episode 4 when they were kidnapped. I was like, we have to reshoot this. She had that sort of little quirk, that X factor of, I'm going to surprise you a little bit. She surprised me many times, and particularly in the case of Inara, she was the only crew member who really changed her clothes very often. And there was some obviously Western, there was some obviously more Asian influences with her, with Anara's character, than probably anybody. She would put something together that really did not exist anywhere else, but not look jarring. Ron was always, very impressed with Marina and her outfits, and he would always say, "Oh, you look wonderful," and "Oh, look at that, splendid," blah, blah, blah. She kept bringing it over and over again. After Firefly, Shawna took over on Angel for the last 2 seasons. She designed Illyria, which is not only an outfit I love, but it's also one that started popping up at cons because, with the exception of, sort of Mal and Kaylee in that world, Illyria was somebody that people came to Comic-Con as. It came from watching Amy read Lady Capulet and going, "Oh, that's what Amy's like when she turns off the Amy. And she's formidable." And Shawna was a part of creating what the character was, And I just loved the sort of bioluminescent sort of off colors that she was using. With Firefly, it was about what can we build? And then when we were doing Dollhouse, it was like, what can I design? Which is different. When we did Dollhouse, the point of the show was every week you're someone else. All the actives, Eliza and Vera and Deachin and everybody else who might show up, were different people every time in a different circumstance and sometimes in kind of a different genre. But we still had to, create a lot of different Elizas, and again, this was never an issue. Third time I worked with Shawna was Dr. Horrible's sing-along blog. We devised it during the strike and ended up shooting it after the strike when Shawna was already working on Dollhouse. She put her all into it. And those are also iconic looks in there that she devised. I love his transition from Dr. Horrible to Dr. Really Horrible with the red and the black glove and all that. I have still in my papers her sketches, beautiful sort of kind of Asian influenced kind of sort of a samurai kind of vibe for the character of Bad Horse, because actually it turned out a lot of people, she did not know that Bad Horse was a horse. So she was like, "Oh, you might not need these then." I was like, "Oh no, I'm keeping these forever." It's not easy to get it right, to find the look for someone. And she managed to maintain that world so that there wasn't a moment where I was like, "What is that?" She always made it work. The first movie I should have done with Shawna was Serenity. She actually came in and made a gorgeous presentation. And there were some people I brought from the show, and some people that the studio insisted, well, we have to use a veteran, and it was my first film. And I didn't give her the nod. And I feel that A, she deserved it, and B, she could have handled it. I got Ruth Carter, I'm not complaining. It worked out. But I think about that regretfully. I was like, she probably should have had that gig. And somebody I saw at the memorial was like, "Oh yeah, she thought so too." Yeah, no, get an agreement on that. I'm like, yeah, I figured. But then when it came to Cabin in the Woods, wasn't a question anymore. And that's fun because in addition to your 5 teen archetypes and your workers, there's all the monsters and all the weird zombies and creatures that you could hope for. I apologize. The full name is Fornicus, the Lord of Bondage of Pain, aka Hell Lord. The trick is that we were evoking, certain things that people would recognize, and sort of, there's a very Hellraiser vibe to Old Forney. Much Ado About Nothing was shot in 12 days. We shot it 1 month and 2 days after the last day of shooting on Avengers. But it meant that, not only did we have no time and no budget, Shawna in that case pretty much took people and was like, "Bring me your best stuff." So it was, the lowest budgety experience you could have, but Shawna was completely game to have it. She always was. And it was, again, a true labor of love. Everybody there was having such a good time, and, and everybody looked great. She managed to make it this very coherent, very elegant piece. If I was going to describe Shawna, beautifully polished, but left of center.
So Shawna Trpcic lives on in her creations, and let's not just remember her for her creations, but because she was so much more than that. Let's honor her memory from the way she touched the lives of those around her in this verse. There's a lot more to say. Obviously, there's a lot more to say, and they can tell us we're out of time, but they can't stop the signal.
And they can't take the sky from us, right?
Take me out into the black. Tell 'em I ain't coming back. Burn the land and boil the sea. You can't take the sky from me. You can't take the sky from me.